Well, Joyce, two of the Democrats I spoke with this afternoon used the word ecstatic to describe today's announcement. And while everyone can agree this is a historic pick, Republicans say it's also a radical pick. Governor Jay Inslee, no surprise, he is on board, tweeting out today that Senator Harris is an excellent choice, calling her a true fighter for environmental justice. Inslee says the ticket is a dynamic and courageous partnership. The state's Democratic Party chair thinks a West Coast senator would be good for Washington state. I also spoke with State Representative Melanie Morgan about the pick. The Pierce County Democrat is one of only 5 African Americans in the state house here in Olympia, and she thinks getting a black woman in the White House would help mend some of the country's long-standing racial wounds. Here's what our political analysts and the party chairs think about the selection.
I think she is probably viewed as the strongest and safest choice of those that were the finalists.
Senator Harris is a co-sponsor of Medicare for All. That is a bill that would abolish private health insurance. And do away with it in America. I don't think that's what the people of this country want to see. She is also a co-sponsor on the radical Green New Deal. Again, outside the mainstream.
I think the GOP is scared. Don't you want to see Kamala Harris debating Mike Pence? I sure do.
It allows us to believe that all the things we've stood for in life work hard, that they work, that they're believable, that they're achievable. It's the American dream.
Now, there have been times where the vice presidential pick can really energize a campaign all the way to November. The Democrats say that is already happening today. The Republicans we spoke with pointed out that candidate Harris didn't exactly energize a lot of people during the primary. Live in Olympia, Drew Mickelson, King 5 News.
All right, Drew, thank you. Here's some more about Senator Harris. She's 55. Earlier this election season, she was in the running for president, but ended her campaign in December. And she has been in the Senate since 2016. She also served several years as California's Attorney General and as a district attorney in San Francisco. Now, the Republican Party is weighing in on Biden's choice. President Trump had these strong words about Harris this afternoon.
She was very, very nasty. To one of the reasons that surprised me, she was probably nastier than even Pocahontas to Joe Biden. She was very disrespectful to Joe Biden, and it's hard to pick somebody that's that disrespectful. When she said things during the debates, during the Democrat primary debates, that were horrible about Sleepy Joe, and I would think that he wouldn't have picked her.
And the Republican National Committee also released a statement today, and this is how it started. Quote, a hiding, diminished, and incoherent Joe Biden didn't just select a vice presidential candidate. He chose the person who would actually be in charge the next 4 years if he is somehow able to win. And goes on to call Harris's policies radical. Next week, Biden and Harris will officially become their party's nominees at the Democratic National Convention. Most of that 4-day event will be virtual. We will hear from Harris on Wednesday night, along with former President Obama. And then Biden is expected to accept the party's nomination on Thursday night.